Welcome to History of Legacies, where finance and history collide. In this episode, we uncover the financial, cultural, and political imprint of the Mongol Empire. From the Silk Road's economic revolution to military innovations that shaped global warfare, we analyze the empire's enduring impact on modern geopolitics and finance. Stay with us as we unveil the hidden threads connecting past and present. Introduction. The Mongol Empire, 1206 to 1368, exploded out of the steppes under Genghis Khan to become the largest contiguous empire in history. At its height, it stretched from the Pacific Ocean to the heart of Europe, uniting diverse cultures under a single rule. The empire's lasting influence is profound, yet sometimes paradoxical. Feared for its conquests, but also credited with connecting East and West. Historians note that Mongol expansion caused a perceivable shift in technology, ideas, culture, religion, warfare, and many other areas, leaving behind a more interconnected world. Decades and even centuries after Genghis Khan's death, the shadow of Genghis Khan looms large over his former empire and the wider world. This report explores the Mongols' legacy in culture, economy, technological innovation, and political discourse, and how those imperial-era developments continue to echo in Mongolia's later history and modern global affairs. Culture, evolution of Mongol customs and global influence. Mongol culture transformed dramatically as the empire expanded. Originally nomadic herders with shamanistic beliefs, the Mongols adopted and embraced foreign cultures rather than extinguishing them. At the imperial courts, they patronized the arts, religion, and learning across Eurasia. For example, Kublai Khan, Genghis's grandson, patronized painting and theater, helping spark a golden age of Chinese drama during the Yuan dynasty. He and his successors also recruited Confucian scholars and Tibetan Buddhist monks as advisors, leading to innovative ideas and construction of new temples and monasteries. Religious tolerance was a hallmark of Mongol policy. All faiths were allowed to flourish under Mongol rule. Genghis Khan decreed freedom of religion for all, a principle upheld by his heirs. As Great Khan Munka stated, "Just as God gave different fingers to the hand, so has he given different ways to men." This openness enabled cultural exchange on an unprecedented scale. Mongol rulers became great cultural patrons and cosmopolitans. They funded advances in medicine and astronomy, built libraries, and even conceived new writing systems. The empire developed the Fagspa script to write multiple languages, though it was short-lived, and adopted the Uyghur script as the basis for written Mongolian. At court, debates were held between Muslims, Buddhists, Christians, and Taoists, an astonishing scene for the 13th century. This multicultural environment produced astronomical advances, blending different traditions, a fusion of cuisines, and a historical narrative that included Chinese, Jewish, Indian, European, and Islamic traditions without centering any one of them. In Persia, the Mongol Ilkhans patronized Persian miniature painting and integrated Chinese artistic motifs, creating new hybrid art styles. In China, the Mongols' religious patronage led to the growth of Tibetan Buddhism at court, even as traditional Chinese literati continued their own cultural pursuits relatively freely. The Mongols themselves often assimilated local customs. For instance, the Great Khans took on the extravagant lifestyle of Chinese emperors, and Mongol elites in Persia converted to Islam and sponsored Islamic art and architecture. Kublai Khan sent her in fur-lined coat on a traditional Mongol hunting expedition. Mongol rulers in China adopted many local customs and tastes, Here, the Great Khan is depicted by a Chinese painter, reflecting the Mongols' patronage of Chinese arts during the Yuan era. The global cultural influence of the Mongols can still be felt. They helped transmit artistic and intellectual ideas across Eurasia. Papermaking and printing technology, originally Chinese, likely traveled west during Pax Mongolica, while Persian and Islamic knowledge in medicine, astronomy, etc. moved east. The Mongols' multicultural model of rulership influenced successor dynasties. The later Ottoman and Mughal empires borrowed Mongol practices of inclusive governance and imperial ideology. Even in modern Mongolia, the legacy of Genghis Khan is a potent cultural force. He is revered as a national hero, a cultural icon inspiring Mongolian national identity, and even a shared vision of the future. Today's Mongolians celebrate traditional sports like wrestling, archery, and horse racing in the Nardam festival, echoing competitions held since the days of the Khans. Thus, from cuisine to art to national mythology, Mongol customs and traditions have evolved but remain deeply influential, serving as a bridge from a storied past to the present. Economy, trade networks, and long-term economic impact. Under Mongol rule, the Eurasian economy became more integrated than ever before. The Mongol Empire's economic policies and trade networks, often termed the Pax Mongolica, created an early age of globalization. Mongol Khans realized that thriving commerce would enrich their empire and satisfy the needs of their mostly pastoral society. The harsh Mongolian steppe produced horses, meat, and dairy in abundance. But the Mongols lacked textiles, grains, metals, and luxury goods. To acquire these, they actively fostered trade. Free trade was encouraged across the empire. Merchants could travel vast distances under Mongol protection without the heavy tariffs or constant warfare that previously hampered long-distance trade. One key policy was the establishment of the Yam, a sprawling postal relay and courier system akin to the Pony Express. Way stations were set up every 20 to 30 miles where riders could rest and swap horses, enabling messages and goods to move at remarkable speeds. This system wasn't just for mail. Merchants and official travelers could use Yam stations with special passports, called paisa. The Mongols issued passport tablets, famously including a gold tablet given to Marco Polo's father and uncle, inscribed with orders to provide them food, horses, and guides throughout the empire. Such measures ensured efficient communication and safe travel for traders and envoys. As a result, the old Silk Road routes bustled with activity. Caravans laden with silk, spices, ceramics, glassware, precious metals, and gems crisscrossed Asia. For the first time, Europeans could travel directly to China. Franciscan friars, Venetian traders like Marco Polo, and other explorers all marveled at the security and order in Mongol domains. A European envoy in the 1240s noted the remarkable speed and safety of travel in Mongol lands, a stark contrast to the lawless steppes of earlier times. The Mongols also innovated in currency and finance. In China, Kublai Khan introduced the world's first paper money as the dominant currency, a revolutionary step in monetary policy. Starting in the 1260s, the Yuan government printed paper banknotes backed by precious metals. By 1275, they even used bronze plates to print more secure notes. Kublai was the first to put in countrywide use of paper currency, requiring foreign merchants to convert their gold and silver into paper notes when trading in Yuan China. This facilitated commerce by providing a unified medium of exchange across his realm, though bouts of inflation did occur and had to be managed by currency reforms. In the Ilkhanate, Persia, the Mongols minted coins and also experimented with paper money briefly. Beyond currency, the Mongols' tax policies were relatively pragmatic. Artisans and professionals were often exempt from corvée labor and heavy taxes to encourage economic productivity. Merchants enjoyed elite patronage. Some became agents of the state, handling tax farming and large caravan ventures. The empire also invested in infrastructure to boost trade, extending the Grand Canal in China to better supply grain to northern cities, building caravanserai, traveler inns along trade routes, and maintaining roads and bridges. All these measures had long-term impacts on the global economy. The Pax Mongolica created a single economic space spanning Eurasia. Asian goods, silk, porcelain, spices flowed west in greater quantities, whetting Europe's appetite. Conversely, European and Middle Eastern wares, glass, horses, textiles, found new Eastern markets. This heightened East-West contact helped inextricably link Europe and Asia and ushered in an era of frequent and extended contacts between East and West. It is no exaggeration to say that Mongol rule set the stage for globalization. Asian goods reached Europe along caravan trails, and European demand for these products eventually inspired the search for a sea route to Asia. Thus, the Mongol invasions indirectly led to Europe's age of exploration. In other words, after the Mongol Empire collapsed, European powers, unable to easily access Asian markets via a now fragmented Silk Road, started looking for oceanic routes, leading Columbus and others to connect the world by sea. Economists today recognize Pax Mongolica as a unique period of pre-modern free trade. Historian John Mullin dubbed Genghis Khan a trade warrior, noting his Pax Mongolica connected Europe and China, leading to exchanges of technology and culture. Indeed, inventions like gunpowder, paper, the compass, and printing techniques traveled westward under Mongol auspices, while crops such as lemons, carrots, spices, and artisans moved in all directions. The Mongol era created an economic interconnectedness that in many ways prefigured modern economic globalization, technological innovation, warfare, transportation, and governance. Despite their fierce reputation, the Mongols were not only conquerors, but also innovators and transmitters of technology. Genghis Khan's rise introduced revolutionary military strategies that gave the Mongols an edge over every opponent. Mongol armies were built on speed, discipline, and adaptability. They perfected the use of horseback archery with the composite bow, able to hit targets at 200+ meters, as their signature weapon. Mobility was key. Each Mongol cavalryman had a string of remounts to allow for days of continuous riding. Commanders employed complex tactics like the feigned retreat, encirclement, and multi-pronged attacks coordinated via signal flags and drums. According to military historians, Genghis Khan introduced strict discipline, new tactics, and the expansion of decimal organization, arranging armies in units of 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000. He even created a kind of imperial military academy to train officers in strategy. These refinements allowed Mongol forces, though often outnumbered, to defeat larger armies across Eurasia. In siege warfare, the Mongols were quick learners and adopters of technology. They recruited Chinese and Persian engineers to build catapults, trebuchets, and early gunpowder bombs. During the invasion of the Middle East, Hulagu Khan's army famously used Chinese-designed siege engines to devastate Baghdad's walls in 1258. Prior to this, Mongols had to rely on their superior national prowess in engineering, production, and military command to breach Zhongdu in 1215, breaching the Great Walls of the Jin dynasty's capital. This single event brought to light that the Mongols were not just simple nomads, but then and thereafter conquerors of cities to rival any empire across the known world. The next single event that cemented Genghis Khan's transformation was a stable transition of power from his life's ambition to his son, Ogedei Khan, in 1229 at the encampment of Kodo Aram on the Karulin River, with the investiture that reminisce his 1206 Kurultai. The Mongols also pioneered psychological warfare, spreading terror to compel cities to surrender rather than resist. Anecdotes tell of creative tactics, from diverting rivers to flood fortresses to launching flaming projectiles and even incendiary swallows and cats to incite chaos in besieged cities. The Mongols' methods were so effective that they continue to be studied in military academies today. Modern analysts compare Mongol maneuvers to blitzkrieg and deep battle concepts. By rapidly concentrating force at decisive points, Mongol generals nearly always seized the initiative. As one military study notes, the rapidity of the Mongol movements invariably gave them superiority of force at the decisive point, the ultimate aim of mobile warfare. In essence, the Mongols perfected maneuver warfare centuries before tanks and airplanes. They used intelligence networks of spies and scouts, hit enemies from multiple directions, and avoided pitched battles unless victory was assured. This flexibility and emphasis on mobility over sheer numbers was innovative for its time and remains relevant to military strategy. It is important to note here the limitations of this imperial empire. In the Battle of Ain Jalut of 1260, the Mamluks in the Levant region were successful at defeating the Mongol Empire. Further expansion from here would not have the same inertia built off of Mongol innovation or ferocity, and instead became the foundation for the Mongol Empire to consolidate its power and turn to variations in imperial innovations related to financial gains. Under the Mongols went beyond the battlefield. In transportation and communication, the Yam postal system was a marvel, as discussed in the economy section. It not only sped up information flow, but also prefigured modern postal and logistics networks. The Mongols built and maintained thousands of miles of roads. Relay riders could cover 200 to 300 kilometers per day, an unheard of pace in the 13th century. This meant that orders from Karakoram, the Mongol capital in Mongolia, could reach distant generals in weeks rather than months. In governance, the Mongols introduced systems that were efficient and surprisingly meritocratic for their era. Genghis Khan implemented the Yasa, a code of law that applied to his entire empire, promoting obedience, unity among the tribes, and harsh punishment for serious crimes like theft. The Yasa emphasized rule of law and order over tribal custom, which helped weld the nomadic clans into a disciplined state. While the exact contents of Yasa remain semi-mythical, its spirit influenced the administration of successor Khanates. Equally significant, the Mongols often promoted officials based on talent, regardless of origin. Positions of power and authority within the Great Khan's army were awarded on the basis of proven ability rather than aristocratic birth, as one analysis notes. This was a radical departure from the feudal norms of many conquered societies. Many capable foreigners rose to high office under Mongol rule. Examples include Marco Polo, as an official in Yuan China's court, and Rashid al-Din, a Persian Jew who became vizier and historian for the Ilkhanate. The Mongols were pragmatic. They knew they needed skilled administrators and artisans to govern far-flung sedentary populations. They formed a kind of multi-ethnic cabinet. Persian, Chinese, Arab, Uyghur, and European advisors all had roles in the empire. This cosmopolitan approach to governance allowed technology and knowledge to circulate. Kublai Khan's court, for instance, employed Middle Eastern astronomers and physicians, resulting in new observatories and improved calendars in China. In summary, the Mongols' technological legacy lies both in the hard tech of war and communications and in the soft tech of administration and law. They did not necessarily invent all the technologies they used. Often they borrowed the best ideas from those they conquered. But they became history's great innovators through adaptation. By spreading gunpowder weapons west, stabilizing the Silk Road, and demonstrating new models of governance, the Mongol Empire served as a conduit for progress. Modern governance concepts like diplomatic immunity have echoes in Mongol practices. Envoys were sacred and protected on pain of death, and their idea of a grand assembly or Kurultai of chiefs has been likened to a parliament in some respects. 4 major khanates, a decision formalized after the Toluid Civil War, 1259 to 1264, between Kublai and Arik Böki. These khanates were the Yuan dynasty in China under Kublai Khan, the Ilkhanate in Persia under Hulagu, the Chagatai Khanate in Central Asia, and the Golden Horde in the Western Steppes, Russia and Eastern Europe. Each Khanate developed its own identity and policies, though all acknowledged, at least nominally, the supremacy of the Great Khan in the early years. In the late 13th century, after Kublai Khan claimed the title of Great Khan in 1264, the empire became a confederation of Khanates: the Yuan dynasty in East Asia, the Ilkhanate in the Middle East, the Chagatai Khanate in Central Asia, and the Golden Horde in the Northwest. This political fracturing set the stage for regional variations in Mongol governance. The legal and administrative systems the Mongols used in these realms were a blend of Mongol traditions and adopted practices. Genghis Khan's Yasa Code, also called Ikhzasag, was a sort of constitution that stressed obedience to the Khan, unity among Mongols, and harsh justice. It forbade feuds, theft, and adultery, and it codified the sharing of spoils and responsibilities. Although later Khanates, especially those that converted to Islam, developed their laws, e.g. embracing Islamic law in Persia, the Mongol emphasis on universal law and order had a lasting influence. The Mongols were notably religiously neutral in governance. They did not impose their native shamanism or steppe customs on settled peoples. Instead, they often strengthened local institutions to serve Mongol interests. In China, the Yuan dynasty kept much of the existing bureaucratic structure, even as Chinese were barred from top posts, and compiled extensive law codes blending Mongol and Chinese law. In Persia, the Ilkhanate after Hulagu gradually adopted Persian administrative techniques and converted to Islam, but they still traced their authority to Genghis Khan's mandate. One of the Mongols' most significant contributions to political discourse is the idea of a world empire under a universal ruler. Genghis Khan styled himself as having the mandate of eternal heaven to conquer the world, a notion of sovereignty that was novel in its global scope. As scholar Aishi Zarakol explains, the Mongols introduced a new type of sovereignty and empire-making that can still be seen today, essentially creating a world order similar to our modern international order. Under the Mongol model, legitimacy came from the Khan's ability to protect and provide for subjects of all cultures, rather than from a shared religion or ethnicity. This secular multinational empire concept influenced how later empires justified themselves. For instance, the Mughal Empire in India, a 16th century state whose very name Mughal means Mongol, traced lineage to Genghis Khan and embraced a policy of pluralism inspired by Mongol precedents. The Ottoman sultans adopted the title of Khan and employed steppe-influenced cavalry and provincial administration, mirroring some Mongol political practices. The Russian Tsars, after breaking from Mongol Tatar rule, in many ways inherited Mongol political structures. The Muscovite state centralized power and tax collection, using methods learned from the Golden Horde. In fact, historians observe that Muscovite Russia was a direct descendant of the Golden Horde. Its government, administration, and military organization were all adapted from the Mongols. They influenced vocabulary, diplomacy, methods of taxation, criminal punishment, and the postal system. This suggests that Russia's tradition of autocracy and efficient bureaucracy owes something to the Mongol yoke, despite later Russians' reluctance to admit it. Another area of political influence is the Mongols' notion of law and tolerance. By enforcing religious freedom and protecting trade, the Mongols, in effect, practiced a form of proto-human rights and international law within their empire. They guaranteed the safety of diplomats, foreshadowing modern diplomatic immunity, and brutally punished those who violated it. They also pursued what we might term a merit-based aristocracy. Many Mongol generals and governors were promoted from humble backgrounds due to talent. This meritocracy and political consensus building through kurultais and family councils were relatively advanced for a medieval society. A contemporary observer might be surprised to see in the 13th century a council where different voices could be aired before a Khan, an early form of deliberative governance. This multifaceted deliberative governance was first disrupted in a significant manner when the last Mongol emperor of China, Togun Temur, was forced to flee Khanbalik, modern-day Beijing, as peasant rebels stormed the city, effectually ending the Yuan dynasty. The once mighty rulers were reduced to the steppes of their northern territories, which would eventually become the nation of Mongolia as we know it today. Comparative analysis: Mongol legacy in modern global context. Why does the Mongol legacy matter today? Several parallels and influences can be drawn. A deeper dive into Mongolian Empire's legacy. Geopolitical unity versus fragmentation. The Mongol Empire was the first to unite the bulk of Eurasia under one rule, similar in scope to what global institutions seek, albeit through cooperation rather than conquest. The idea of a Eurasian world order, begun by the Mongols, can be compared to later hegemonic periods like the Pax Britannica or Pax Americana. Just as Pax Mongolica provided stability for trade, today's global powers attempt to secure trade routes and influence, for example, China's Belt and Road Initiative. Economic globalization. The connections fostered by the Mongols mirror today's globalized economy. One could say the Mongols presided over history's first age of globalization. Modern concepts like free trade, secure trade routes, and even common currencies have precedence in Mongol policy. Kublai's paper money was an early attempt at fiat currency unifying a huge market. Military strategy and modern tactics. Mongol military principles find resonance in modern warfare. The concept of swift, coordinated strikes is essentially what modern combined arms operations seek to do. One might draw a line from Subutai's long-range campaigns, which hit multiple targets in sequence, to the idea of shock and awe in the 21st century. Even specific Mongol innovations, like a military courier network, have a modern parallel in the internet or secure military communications, ensuring coordination. Governance and legal influence. The Mongols' legal pluralism and tolerance prefigured modern, secular governance. For instance, their Edict of Religious Freedom was a medieval precursor to today's ideal of separation of church and state. The Mongolian World Empire, does it matter? Association for Asian Studies. The comparative analysis can note that many modern states cherish the principle that different religions can coexist under one law. Exactly what the Yasa and Mongol policy accomplished in its time. Additionally, the Mongols employed international law concepts. They expected foreign rulers to respect envoys and trade, and declared war in retaliation when that trust was broken. The Mongol invasion of Khwarizm was triggered by the governor of Otrar's execution of Mongol merchants and envoys, violating diplomatic norms. Nation branding and identity. Mongolia today uses the legacy of the empire as a tool in global affairs. The country positions itself as the descendant of a great empire. For instance, Ulaanbaatar has a massive Genghis Khan statue, and Mongolia's government promotes Genghis as a symbol of unity and pride. This can be compared to how other nations use historical legacy, e.g., how modern Greece references ancient Greece's glory. Mongolia's soft power, such as hosting international conferences, Ulaanbaatar Dialogue, or peacekeeping, sometimes invokes the spirit of Genghis Khan's diplomacy, turning a historical image into political capital. On the flip side, the Mongol Empire's memory affects other countries' identities too. Russia's historical narrative of overcoming the Tatar yoke, or China's narrative of expelling the Mongols to found the Ming. Lessons on integration and collapse. Modern multilateral institutions, UN, WTO, etc., strive for unity but struggle with diversity. The Mongol Empire offers a case study of managing diversity. Their success in integrating various peoples and eventual failure when the empire overextended and cultural gaps grew too large provides lessons. For instance, the Mongols could conquer quickly but had trouble holding on to places where they became a tiny ruling minority, like China, where by 1368 the local backlash expelled them. This parallels the challenges of imperialism or even interventions today. Military might can subdue nations, but long-term governance requires cultural integration and legitimacy. The comparative point: tolerance and adaptability were strengths of the Mongols, but when later Mongol rulers grew inflexible or decadent, as some sources depict the UN court, they lost the mandate to rule. It's a historical echo of winning hearts and minds, relevant to any great power engagement today. By drawing these comparisons, the sense that the Mongols set patterns we are still grappling with. How to unite different cultures under one system. How to secure trade across hostile regions. How to use speed and surprise in warfare. How to remember a violent past while honoring contributions to progress. The Mongol story encapsulates all these modern questions.